the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is Spirit Session Podcast with Katie Silcox. Venga chicos, empezamos. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. So as many of you know, we are gearing up over here at the Shakti School to start level 2, April 9th. And I am really having to set a lot of boundaries with myself. We've got a ton of programs going on in Shakti School. As many of you know, I wrote a new book. Luckily, that's kind of settled down. And I can just really feel the energy of spring, that feeling of wanting to do a lot. And so I'm having to really watch what I say yes to and what I say no to, and really what I say yes to. And so today I thought it would be a good idea to talk about boundaries. It's something that's been very much in the cultural zeitgeist. Very good, very good. But as these things tend to happen when something becomes super popular, there can be, I don't know if I want to say misunderstanding. It's just these concepts often get diluted. And one of the things that my mentor was saying to me a few months ago when we were talking about boundaries, the one thing that people often get wrong, and you can kind of see this reflected in funny videos or memes, is that my boundaries don't really have anything to do with you. And like the misunderstanding is that I want to set up a boundary so that you don't bother me anymore, or you don't say that thing that I don't like, or you, and so you guys see what I'm saying. And so what that is that's trying to control another person, which is actually the opposite of boundaries. Boundaries don't have anything to do with other people. They're not about managing other people's behaviors, emotions. They're about you. And really, the only real boundary that we can set is within. And then we can communicate, hopefully, calmly, lovingly, wisely. We can communicate that. I don't always get this right, the whole wisely, calmly, and communicatively. But what I have been sort of amazed on is this idea that my boundaries aren't about you, they're about me. And so first things first, the most important boundaries that we can set are the ones that we learn how to set from within, the ones that we learn how to set for ourselves. And so all of us were raised in different parental family structures, and we all learn different ways of working with the boundaries that we set for ourselves. If you had perfect parents, which none of us did, then you may have learned how to really self-regulate, to regulate your emotions, to feel them without blowing them out on everyone or repressing them all the time. And most of us didn't get that. And then we all got sort of a different set of ways of coping. And some of us learned some really unhealthy habits related to food or alcohol or purchasing things or media, for example. And so for most of us, almost everyone I know, certainly the women that come to Shakti School, we're learning how to create those boundaries oftentimes in ourselves, the ones that may have been weak or lacking. And so what does that look like? I want you to think of your own, but I'm going to give you guys some examples of things that have been super helpful for me to think about in terms of setting boundaries. Setting a boundary looks something like you don't get to eat dessert and french fries with every meal, right? Maybe you can have french fries once a month. Maybe you can have dessert once a month. That depends on what your metabolism can handle. But for me, I was laughing so hard the other day. There's this wonderful sitcom, if you haven't seen it, it's called Mom. Really good. And they're all women in AA. And this one woman comes in and she is not in AA. She does not have a problem with alcohol. And she's saying like, you guys can just eat like half a cookie. You don't have to eat the whole batch of cookies, but you don't have to deprive yourself from cookies. Couldn't you just do the same thing with alcohol? And they're kind of like looking at her, and one woman looks at her and she goes, "We aren't half cookie kind of gals." And I laughed so hard because some of us, many of us can eat half a cookie, can eat a whole cookie, can eat a couple cookies. It's no big deal. You go on about your life the next day. You may never think of cookies for another couple weeks. There are others of us that are not half cookie girls. And if you eat half a cookie, some of y'all already know what I'm about to say. You're going to eat the whole freaking tube of Oreos, right? I'm not a half cookie kind of girl. Me personally, I can have half a cookie. It's all good. But can I start eating cheeseburgers? Not really, because then I start to crave that cheese and that salt and that fat. I'm not half a cheeseburger kind of girl. So I want you to think about that. In what way are you not a half cookie kind of girl? And it may be in no way, and that's cool. But for a lot of us, we need to know what our weak spot is. Ayurveda speaks of this. Everyone has a place where the imbalance will show up, where they are their weakest. So setting a boundary around that, knowing if you're a half cookie kind of girl or not. Same goes with alcohol. This is a big one. Some of us can have a glass of wine, no big deal. Have some drinks on the weekend, no big deal. Others of us, it starts to become a lifestyle. Now, every time you get home from work, I'm thinking about the wine, right? I want it. You might be not a half a glass of wine kind of gal. The other realm is money. Sticking to a good budget, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million in the bank or $1 in the bank. Having boundaries around money is super important. Money is prana. Knowing how much to let flow, which is so important. We don't want to hoard, and how much to let go. And that's also flow, right? And how much to store for the winter, savings. Those are all things to really think about. Also having good media boundaries. This is super challenging these days, right? Our little devilish devices are in our pockets all the time. And so one of my boundaries is not getting on these screens after a certain period, usually around sundown. I start to try to just turn off the phone. And that's been huge for me. Another one is around work and emails. Anybody out there, right? We live in a world where our grandparents would go to work, come home, and it wouldn't be there for most of them. Nowadays, almost all of us have jobs where we can work a little bit after 7 when the kids are in bed or whatever. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that might be a boundary for you. For me, I have to have those self-created boundaries. It might look something as simple as just putting an autoresponder on your email. We have that if you've ever written us a note at the Shakti School. I do not want my staff working on weekends. In fact, we're trying to eventually get down to a 4-day work week. Also, keeping a regular schedule is a hallmark of Ayurveda. And it's not that we want to become rigid in our boundaries. We want to have permeable, soft boundaries that can be adaptable when the time is right. But also our nervous system thrives on regular routine, having a regular bedtime, a regular wake time, regular meal time. These are ways of actually having good boundaries for your nervous system. Then, if you want to stay up and party one weekend, no big deal, right? But having those impeccable boundaries during the week, for example, really, really important. Another one that I think a lot about as a single woman, but it applies as well to people in partnerships, is what are my boundaries around my sexuality, especially when you're dating? What are my What are my needs? What are my desires? What are my non-negotiables? And especially around my sex life, right? What do I require to feel safe? What do I require to feel respected, known, loved? That's a big one. Just another really silly one. It's like, how many times am I eating out each week? How many times am I ordering DoorDash or going to Starbucks, to really look at that and really hone in. And again, it's not about right or wrong. It's about having energetic integrity and boundaries. And so those are just a few of the many, many, ways that you might want to have good boundaries with yourself. And that's where it starts. And so that's where we check in. And then when it comes to boundaries with other people, what we are communicating with them is our boundaries for ourselves. For example, checking in before you automatically say yes to a request from someone else. I was having this discussion with one of my best buds last week around there is this feeling in so many of us, especially as women, but I think men feel this way too from what they tell me, of I get a request for someone who wants help or who wants me to attend a party or an event, and my immediate answer is no. That's the immediate answer. I don't want to do that. I actually don't want to do that. And so this is about boundaries with yourself and being honest and truthful. And then what do I do? And it's so instant. Then this other voice comes in and says, well, you should do that. You should always help everyone in any way that they ask you all of the time. And do I believe that? No, I don't. And did I learn that? Sure. And so I'm learning, I'm trying, and I'm hopefully getting better at being able to just be honest and kind and truthful. And I was speaking with my friend about this, and I write about this in Glowworthy, that this is so hard because speaking loving truth many times comes with what is known as a boundary pushback. You say, this isn't going to work for me. And the other person says, well, you suck. You aren't a good friend, or you aren't a spiritual person, or I did this for you, so you should do this for me, or on and on and on and on. And what I think is that in that moment, you are getting powerful information about the quality of the relationship. Because my besties, I'm thinking I'm going to just say her name because I know she listens to podcasts, my dear friend Faith. She's the best. I know that if we make a plan and I have to cancel, she's going to be like, yeah, I get it. All good. Bye. And it makes me love and value her and our friendship. And I feel safe. I feel like I can tell her the truth. And I feel like I trust our relationship. I trust that it's there even when we can't take as many walks as we used to, or, with my bestie Liz, we can't sit at the pool as much as we used to, right? That the relationship is safe and it's stable. Shout out Liz and Faith. Thank you. And those are the people that are my really closest friends. And the other thing that is that you'll get information that that's not what's happening. And there is this big expectation. I remember years ago, so many years ago, it was like 6 or 7 years ago, having the experience of saying no to someone and there being this like really painful, violent, verbal rage, right? And I'm not shaming or blaming that person. I perhaps have done the same thing. It's just all of us are working with this type of stuff. But there was so much upset that it made me realize like there was this undercurrent of expectation and a contract that I didn't know I had signed up for. And so when you actually start to speak truth, set healthy boundaries in your relationships, what you'll find is that the unconscious expectations in the other person or in ourselves come to the surface. It's good information to have. And for many relationships, there can be some clarity and hopefully some repair, and the friendship doesn't have to end, right? It can actually become stronger. So boundaries We're going to be really diving into our personal boundaries that we set with ourselves in level 2. Some of you might be listening to this as the podcast, and we would love for you to check out what we do. We have a 3-hour mini course that we'd love to invite you into. It explains exactly what we do here, called Feminine Form Ayurveda, which the feminine also holds the masculine. And you can have that. We'll put the link to the level 2 sign up and our free mini course for those of you who might be new to us or new to the podcast. All right, beauties, good luck with setting your good boundaries first with yourself. And then secondly, learning how to be lovingly honest with those who are all around you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.